In this video, we'll add a new feature using test-driven development. So we'll add a test first, we'll make it fail, and then we'll implement the feature to make the test pass. The new feature we'll add is a new messages get call or endpoint that will allow us to get the messages from a specific owner by checking the name, and we'll get that name through a URL parameter. So let's begin by creating a test. We'll start with a new describe. And these tests will revolve around getting messages from a specific user. The first test will be the standard it should return a 200 OK, so I'll just copy this from above from line 10 through line 15 and paste it in our new describe. Next, I'll need to supply a username at the end of the URL, and I'll just use Tim. Let's save that and give it a try. We'll use npm test. We can see there were 4 specs that were run and 1 that failed. Our get messages from user should return 200 OK, and we got a 404 not found that we expected to equal 200. And so that's good. The route doesn't exist yet, and we should get 404, so it is failing just like we expect. Now let's go ahead and make that pass. So let's go to our server.js and copy our app.getMessages function and paste it below. Then let's add a user parameter. Now that I've added the user parameter, that should be it. Let's try and see if our test passed. Now that we ran our test, we can see it's passed. It did find the route, and regardless of what was sent to us back, our test passed. But we don't know if it actually functions as expected, because our full requirement is that it only gives us messages of the specified user. So let's create another specification for that. We'll check that the name should be Tim. And we'll copy the request call between line 26 and 29 and paste it inside. Then let's check the response.body. And as before, we'll need to convert it to JSON. Then we'll get the first element in our array and check the name and make sure that it's equal to Tim. We'll save that. And before we run it, think of whether it will work or will fail. Let's give it a try. And it's failed. That's because the messages we currently have in our database aren't guaranteed to be posted by Tim. Second of all, we don't have the functionality yet in our server to support that specification. We're just returning all of the messages. Let's go ahead and implement the functionality to make this pass. First thing we'll need to do is get access to that user parameter. So we'll create a variable called user, set it to request.params.user. And then we'll select all of our messages if the name matches the user. Now once again, if we run this, think whether it will fail or pass. And it failed. And it cannot read property name of undefined. Why is that? Since we're only getting back messages that the user Tim owns, we currently don't have any messages by Tim, and so we're getting back nothing in our array, and it's failing as a result. So at this point, let's go back to our app and post a new message by Tim. And now let's try running our test again. And it's passed. It's not ideal that we have to actually set the state of our database and our server in order for our test to pass. The ideal thing would be that our test suite sets up the server and the database just the way it should be before the tests are run. And in more advanced testing, that's exactly what we would do. We'd have a before function that executes at the start of our test or test suites that sets up the database with, say, a message from Tim. The tests then execute, and then an after function would execute and remove that message, therefore returning the database back to a normal state. And those are some of the important concepts of testing and test-driven development. At this point, we've developed a feature in our application by writing tests for it first. Let's go to our browser and try it out for ourselves. And we can see it's working. And that's the basic process of test-driven development. Next, let's take a look at some of the things we've covered in this course and where you can go from here.